Complete this sentence. Donald Trump is the first president in 168 years not to have...
Oh. Come on, anyone.
Not to have what?
A trace of common decency.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Charm.
Charm.
I
Anybody?
think these are all too obvious. I'm
Yeah.
going to go with not to have the ability to pee standing up.
Wow.
So, since 1850?
Washington?
Since 1850. What happened in 1850?
Coronation Street started.
It's all the whole show is about.
Oh, pet animals. Pet.
Pets.
Pet?
He's the first president not to have a pet in the White House.
He's got Melania.
They all had pets. Thomas Jefferson had 2 bear cubs. Benjamin Harrison had 2 opossums called Mr. Reciprocity and Mr. Protection.
What?
Franklin D. Roosevelt had a Great Dane, rather confusingly called President. Robert Hoover's son, Alan, had a pair of alligators. Teddy Roosevelt, I think, gets the prize for best presidential pet owner. 9 dogs, 2 ponies, 2 cats, a hen, a lizard, a blue macaw, a garter snake named Emily Spinach, named by his daughter Alice because it's as green as spinach and as thin as my Aunt Emily. A small bear, a piebald rat, a pig, a rabbit, a laughing hyena, a barn owl, a one-legged rooster and 5 guinea pigs. He also had 6 children, which seems a lot, and a badger called Josiah. He also had the pony called Algonquin, who was so beloved by the president's son, Archie, that when he was sick in bed, his brothers Kermit and Quentin brought the pony up in the lift.
Who'll bring the pony up to the room now? Who's going to your pony?
I don't think Mother would allow that.
In 1940, Franklin D. Roosevelt was given a Scottish Terrier puppy that he named Murray the Outlaw of Fala Hill after one of his Scottish ancestors, and it was known as Fala, and it travelled everywhere with the president. He became a celebrity in his own right. He had his own secretary to answer fan mail. That's him there with the genius Eleanor Roosevelt, who really was the power behind the throne in that particular presidency. During the Battle of the Bulge, that's the last sort of big German offensive in the Second World War, the American soldiers used to ask each other the name of the president's dog, and if you got the answer Fala, then you knew it probably wasn't a German who was masquerading as an American. Donald Trump is the first president of the United States to steer clear of any petting in the White House.
Oh.
I'm just going to let that live in the air for a second. What are these people doing?
Moving a massive nipple tassel.
Yes. So what's this? Tippecanoe?
Tippecanoe procession. Does anybody know anything about Tippecanoe?
No.
This is to do with an American presidential election. So it's called a presidential campaign ball. So in 1840, William Henry Harrison ran for US president against the incumbent President Martin Van Buren, and his whole campaign centred around victory balls. So huge spheres. They were made of tin and of leather. They were more than 10 feet in diameter, and they had pro-Harrison and anti-Van Buren slogans written on them, and his supporters would go to a rally, and then they would roll the ball all the way to the next town in order to gain attention. The word OK comes from this election. So Martin Van Buren came from Old Kinderhook, and OK comes from things will be as good as they were in Old Kinderhook, which is where he came from in New York. So this is the beginning of us using that expression, that things are OK. It's an extraordinary campaign because it spawned the phrase, keep the ball rolling. That's where we get from. But Tippecanoe was Harrison's nickname. So he was the leader of the US forces in the Battle of Tippecanoe. And the campaign was a huge success. Harrison was elected president, first election in American history. There they are, in which a candidate won more than a million popular votes. Unfortunately, he died a month after becoming president.
Run over by a giant ball, I think.
Yeah. And then the really weird thing, 1888, his grandson, Benjamin, was elected president with exactly the same strategy. So here is the actual ball, and you can see how big it was. It was steel-ribbed and canvas-covered, this one, and they rolled it around 5,000 miles from Maryland to Indiana.
by hand? Or
Yes,
did they
done.
have not even like a horse drawn
No,
thing?
supporters would roll the ball along.
God.
Wow.
No, it is astonishing. Yeah.
That's the bloke in charge of it, isn't he? He's not happy about it, is he? No.
Just found out the route.
You're going downhill for 1,000 miles.
There have been some truly terrible American presidential slogans. This is Ulysses S. Grant in 1872. Alfred M. Landon against Franklin Roosevelt in 1936. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Thomas Dewey versus Franklin Roosevelt, 1944.
That's pretty good, to be fair.
This is my favourite, Richard Nixon, 1972. What's so darn shocking about this map?
Is darn important?
Darn is very
Thing?
important,
So
yes.
it's something to do with knitting?
Knitting?
No, not that
Weaving.
kind of darn, where in the United States, what might darn be for?
Darn.
Darn.
People who say darn.
Yes, people who say darn. It's a euphemism for damn from 1781, and this is its jizz score, OK? It's statistics, people, OK? There was an analysis done of 9 billion words
9 billion
in American tweets.
ejaculations.
Blue is bad, but orange is really bad.
9 billion words in American tweets, and then they geocoded them, so they analysed where they are, pinpointing on a map, and then they displayed them as heat maps. So this is darn, and if you look at the more the word is used, the darker the red colour, and the less it's used, the darker the blue. So it shows that darn is used very heavily in the northern central states, well, in tweets at the very least. So have a look at this one. What word do you think this map represents? There's another American swear word.
Golly.
You're close, it's gosh.
Gosh.
It's gosh.
Puritan.
So heavily used around Texas, you can see where the red is, and hardly at all up in New England. They don't use gosh very much. I
quite like that.
I like these ones.
Is this words that people use when they jizz? Is that what it is? Gosh darn it. I'm sorry, Miss
Torn
Ella.
up now. This show's changing, isn't it?
And I'm just trying to wrestle it back. So have a look at this one. Very heavily used in New England, hardly used in the southeast at all.
God damn.
It's asshole.
Asshole.
Yeah. That, and who thought
Why
there
do
was
they
a...
not use it? They don't say asshole in Arkansas. then.
Georgia.
Or the Carolinas.
Yeah, not used in Florida.
It's not used in Montana because there's nobody there.
That's true. It's not often you see a map of the jizz score for arsehole, is it? It's not a...
Not now Stephen's gone.
So here's the question is, do you think that people who swear a lot are more articulate or less articulate?
More.
Why?
Because they've got more words.
That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right.
Wank and bloody and things like that. People who don't swear haven't got those words.
You were doing so well, and now you're going to hardly appear in the programme at all. No, there's a swearing fluency test, and if you do the test and you ask people to write down how many swear words they can think of in 2 minutes, the people who will succeed best are the people who are the most articulate. Although it depends on what language you speak. So Japanese, very, very few swear words.
Dutch bargees, they can swear uninterrupted, most of them, for 2 minutes without repetition or hesitation.
Can they really?
Yeah, Dutch is really good. They've got, what's that word? Schwaffling.
What does it mean?
Well, you certainly couldn't say it on Dutch television. It means to bang your penis against the Taj Mahal.
Who amongst us hasn't had that urge?
Do you know the capital of Alaska?
Yes, you just said it.
Exactly, thank you. Very good. Juneau is the capital of Alaska. Juneau. Juneau. But there's something unique about it.
It rains all the bloody time, I know that.
Well, it's not accessible by road. You can only get there by air or water. There is no road to Juneau.
Sarah Palin can get there by walking on the water.
Well. And can you tell me the biggest joke ever to come out of Alaska?
Sarah Palin. Who
We're not forfeiting you that. It was so obvious.
Oh,
we weren't even going to forfeit it.
If I had forfeited, I would have repudiated.
We would have repudiated. Anyway, the point is, there is actually a famous practical joke, an April Fool's joke that came out of Alaska. It took a lot of preparation and it was rather extraordinary. We'll show you a photograph that might give you a hint. I mean, it's not really going to be easy, but what's in the background now?
This is a volcano-based practical
Yes.
joke, and it's one that I read about it, and it very much impressed me because if you do a practical joke, which is, cling film over the toilet, something simple.
Yeah.
The person who did this practical joke... It's a good one. It doesn't work for women necessarily because we tend to notice when we sit down that there's some... But for men, I tell you, it's a hoot. There was a volcano... and a gentleman, I can't remember his name, I apologise, decided to try and make it seem as if it was erupting, so took loads of tyres and set fire to it, and then everyone came out of their houses and went, the volcano's erupting. Because it was so good.
Right. He waited 3 years till there was a clear April the 1st. He took kerosene and smoke bombs and tyres and he dropped them down the crater and set fire to it. But in 50-foot letters, he did say April Fool, and he warned the federal authority. He called them up, but he forgot to call the Coast Guard, who did panic a bit. But it was, fortunately, all taken in the right spirit. And his name is Porky Bickar.
Porky?
Porky. That was his nickname. Porky. He was American, so he was called Porky. Porky Bickar. And that is, aside from Sarah Palin, the greatest joke ever to come out of Alaska.
It is a good one.
I have to say, I am very impressed, again, with your knowledge. One of the biggest problems faced by explorers, as you can probably imagine, is that of language. Alan and Bill, I would like you two to imagine that you are two of the Pilgrim fathers who've arrived on the Mayflower in the coast of the United States, or America.
Right.
And I would like Rich and Sean to imagine you are Native Americans who meet them. How, you can use sign language if you like, would you communicate?
I would immediately read from the Book of Common Prayer. Hail, savage.
Hi, how are you?
What's that, Toby jug?
Yes.
Where's the pub?
Foaming pint of beer.
Humity, huppatimity, itimity, never mind the buzzcocks. Jonathan Creek. What's about? Habbatitata, I can't believe my eyes.
Not just never mind the buzzcocks, other things as well. Do stand up. Ha 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 ha. And piano. Playing in hotels.
You think you're the first explorers here, don't you? Where do you think these eyeglasses came from?
The extraordinary thing is, between them, Rich and Bill are absolutely right. The first thing said by one of the Native Americans who met the Plymouth Brethren was, could I have some beer? In English. He asked for beer in English.
He met the Indian, did?
Yes. He spoke fluent English. He'd crossed the Atlantic 6 times. This was in 1620. America had been visited by others. The Pilgrim Fathers were not the first people to land in America by any means.
It's a trick question, wasn't it?
Yeah, his name was Squanto, the best known of them.
Yes.
But this particular one was called Samoset, and he spoke very good English.
Somerset.
What did he say then? Get off my land!
Have you got some cider?
You bloody Pilgrim farmers, get off my land!
He learned his English from fishermen and from his friend Squanto. And from the archers, probably, as well.
Sure. Are you buzzcocks? That's what he said.
But instead of getting beer, he got cheese and a bit of duck. And they both helped the Pilgrim Fathers survive their first year because they had nothing to eat when they arrived. And all there was Maine lobster, which is now a delicacy, but they thought was hideous.
But they were in terrible strife, weren't they? And they were about to starve. Yeah. And then they said, well, actually, you can... here's some turkey. Yes. And the full...
And some cranberries.
And then they killed them all. With guns.
Unfortunately, yes. There was 50 years of peace, though. In fact, Squanto brokered a peace that lasted for 50 years. They lived together very happily. He was an interesting fellow, Squanto. He was kidnapped from his village by a British captain around 1605, which was 15 years before the Mayflower sailed. And he lived in England for 9 years, and then he returned home on another British ship. Then another British captain kidnapped him and tried to sell him into slavery in Spain. He was rescued by some Spanish friars, escaped back to London, took ship again, this time to Newfoundland, found it was too far to walk home, so he sailed all the way back to England. The following year, he signed up for an exploratory expedition to New England and crossed the ocean again. By the time he had crossed the Atlantic 6 times, he was fluent. How many bullets are there in a gunslinger's revolver?
7.
5.
12 stones, all outside.
6.
Well, 6, they're called 6 guns, and they have, as you noticed, 6
But there were
chambers.
6 in and 1 in the spout, isn't that?
No, it's not. It's quite the other way round.
5.
You're right, 5. Why 5?
Gravity.
Well, it's simply safety. Wyatt Earp, who one can be regarded as something as an expert, he said, I've often been asked why 5 shots without reloading were all the top-notch gunfighter ever fired with, 5, when his guns were chambered for 6. The answer is safety. The hammer rested on the empty chamber, so it could never discharge by mistake because there was no safety catch on it. And there, of course, the great Clint Eastwood. I did a thing in America once, and there was an armourer who's the film guy who gives you the gun and everything and takes it away and keeps you safe and gives you blanks or whatever. And he told me a fact. He'd been doing it since the 30s. He'd been working on westerns. He said only 2 actors he ever worked with, and he worked with them all, didn't blink when they fired a gun. This is actually, oddly enough, a shot of Clint exactly proving he was one of them, because the gun's going off and his eyes are open, as much as they ever were. And he was one. He never blinked. John Wayne blinked, you know, Anthony Quinn, Gary Cooper. Who's the other?
Kenneth Williams.
Carry On Cowboy. Yes, it goes wide open. The idea of those butch American armourers called Rusty and Randy, whatever, having heard of Kenneth Williams. It was your own guy, Kenneth goddamn Williams. No,
bravest guy I ever
It's
knew.
actually Westworld is probably the Western most people would think of. Yul Brynner, yeah. Yul Brynner never blunk. So anyway, the answer is they have 5 bullets. Not. How many cricket pitches are there in Kansas?
1 big one.
Well, there's certainly it's a big square shape, but not a cricket pitch shape, Kansas.
It's to do with the measurement of corn, isn't it? It's to do with the measurement. It's nothing to do with the measurement of
No,
corn.
you're on exactly the right lines. Americans, how do they measure? Do they use the metric system or do they use a version of our imperial system?
They use yards and feet and miles and
Yes,
things.
and the length of a cricket pitch, which is?
22 yards.
22 yards, and it's called a chain.
OK.
And when America was being measured out, they used these ancient English measurements. A chain, as I say, is 22 yards. There are 10 chains to a word that's still used in sport.
Furlong?
A furlong. Brilliant. 4 points, 7 points. 80 chains to a...
Mile?
Mile, yes. Excellent. We'll do very well here. And an acre is 10 square chains. That's where an acre is derived. OK? And this man, Gunter's chain, he actually had a chain that he used, like that, to measure out the land. So the whole of the northern Midwestern states were initially into blocks of 24 miles by 24, and within that subdivided into 20 chains by 20 chains, known as 40s, because that would be 40 acres. You may remember in The Grapes of Wrath, the Steinbeck novel, that their farmstead is the smallest type of farm, which is known as a 40.
I know a thing about the 40.
Oh, yes.
The 40 acres.
Yeah.
Did they not, when they had the emancipation of the slaves, were they not each entitled to a 40?
Yeah.
That was indeed.
And a mule, which is why Spike Lee called his company 40 acres and a mule. That's the thing I know about the 40.
7 points again. It's just the 7 times table.
And is the country still divided by the Willie Nelson line?
You can see them there. This is from the air. And because Kansas, which is one of the most rectangular shapes of any of the states, almost perfectly so, you can actually calculate how many it is. And it's 3,474,386,388 cricket pitches would fit in there, in fact.
That's quite different to the answer I had in mind.
How many men have been president of the United States?
Oh, it's 46 or something?
Well, shall we ask the great man himself? Shall we ask the current president?
Is he here?
Is he here tonight? Ladies and gentlemen.
What a waste of a guest.
I'm glad we've given up my seat. I think he sat in the audience for this one.
Here he is, the president, but which number of the United States? He's here to tell us.
I thank President Bush for his service to our nation. As well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. 44 Americans have now taken the presidential oath.
He's wrong. He made a mistake.
He's only been on once and he's wrong already.
He is currently known as the 44th, just as Bush was known as the 43rd, but they aren't. Bush was the 42nd and he's the 43rd.
Oh.
Do you know why this is?
One of them was invisible.
Was there someone who was president for a bit and then stopped being president? Someone else was president and came back?
There was one non-consecutive president, who was the 22nd and the 24th.
Why did they count him as two? That doesn't make any sense. Yet they count Clinton as one.
Yeah, because his terms are consecutive. This one was the 22nd, then Benjamin Harrison was president, and then he was the 24th. This was Grover Cleveland.
I think if I was doing that, if I was setting that system up, I would have gone for the number of different men. Right?
Yes.
I would say, you know, that you get a new number if you're a different man.
Person, exactly.
Not if there was a gap.
No, I know, but there's only ever been one gap, and for some reason they didn't do that. So when he took his second oath, he was called the 24th president, although he was the same man who'd been the 22nd.
Well, he was actually Starling.
He was, he does look a bit like
So not only did he rule Russia, kill millions of people, he was two presidents of the United States.
It's a weird system,
That's
isn't
a CV.
It's quite a bombshell.
Now we know what he was doing in between presidents.
Yeah, exactly. Barack Obama is, in fact, the 43rd person to become president of the United States because Grover Cleveland held the position twice with a 4-year break in between, making him the 22nd and the 24th president of the United States.
Greeks used it for earache. Columbus took 80 tons of it to America, and Henry VIII made it compulsory. What am I talking about?
Oh, hang on a second. What's the theme of the show? It's joints?
Yes.
I'm going to guess marijuana.
Ooh, marijuana is the right answer. Hemp, cannabis, yes.
So he took 80 tons to America?
Yes.
You're saying that he's
Columbus
a trafficker? Saying Columbus is a drug trafficker?
He must have had a very big sphincter.
It was pretty enormous.
Pretty nervous when you got accustomed, I would imagine.
Well, as you probably know, cannabis plant is also used for the creation of hemp and ropes. He had tons of it just on his ship alone, of rope made from hemp. And also, it was made under King James, it was made compulsory for the colonials to grow it and to use it. They mostly wore hemp clothing. And hemp was used as an oil, as a lubricant, and all kinds of things. As you can buy hemp oil now. But by the middle of the 19th century, cannabis was recommended by the US Pharmacopoeia for the following disorders: neuralgia, tetanus, typhus, cholera, rabies, dysentery, alcoholism, anthrax, leprosy, incontinence, snakebite, gout, tonsillitis, and insanity.
So that seemed to be a list of pretty much everything, though. I would imagine if you went into the chemist, it sounds like they only had one thing. What have you got? Well, I'll have a think.
Well, there's a Greek word for that, panacea, a cure-all, literally. And so they did more or less think it was a panacea, as they did so many drugs, as they did heroin when that came out, and cocaine.
Well, in defence of both of those, it will take the edge off.
But there are still people who believe it. People are very keen for the legalisation of medicinal marijuana.
It seems weird that we haven't got medicinal marijuana, but we've got medicinal heroin.
Yes, isn't it?
That's kind of an odd quirk, isn't it?
I suppose so, except that, of course, there is no real painkiller available except the one that we get from the poppy, which includes morphine and heroin. We just can't make a drug that does the same thing.
Mummy's hugs.
Mummy's hugs and kisses. Oh, sweetheart.
Mummy's hugs.
That's so
and
lovely.
Then if they don't work, heroin.
Yeah. I think you've got it spot on the money, Jack. Absolutely. Describe the aviation techniques of the concrete arrows.
Well, concrete can't really fly, Stephen, can they? Because it's very heavy.
Well, you're saying the jumbo jet isn't heavy?
Good point.
It needs a lot of thrust.
Well, you can, so when you're in an aeroplane, you can hear that noise, which is them filling it with helium. Assuming that's what the noise is, and that's how it works. Yeah.
Yes,
We're just waiting for the cabin to fill with helium, and then we will float gently up and then across the sea.
Imagine the conversations you'd have in the plane if it was filled with helium.
It does stuff to your ears, so that's what you are hearing, but it sounds normal.
Good point. We look to you for all this information. We're very grateful for it. Well, naturally, of course, you are quite right in the sense that there have never been any flying vehicles built of concrete.
But there have been concrete arrows that have a great deal to do with aviation. And we go back to the early days of aviation, in a country that was expanding perhaps more rapidly than any economy has ever expanded, and that was the place...
America.
The United States of America, yes. And there's a large landmass, and they had...
arrows to show the way across it?
Well, yes, they had...
Is that how big
this
the
was
arrows
even faster.
were?
No.
No.
Those would be huge. But
they would be huge.
They were big enough. They had 70-foot-long concrete arrows every 10 miles across the USA. And there's one that still exists. In 1933, they stopped the programme because radio advances and so on had meant they were unnecessary for navigation. But before that, they really needed to find a way that aeroplanes didn't have to dive down into towns to look and see where they were, which before that...
Ask for direction.
Yeah, basically.
Go down along the high street.
Where am I? And what was common was that the towns would actually paint the name of the town on a large roof.
Is that what those big... You see roofs with T's written on
well,
it?
maybe.
Is that for pilots who fancy a scone? T's, but no airport nearby, sorry.
But there, yes, the arrows, straightforward, really simple, and it worked. Speaking of things visible from the air, can you imagine something that the French made visible from the air to try and win the First World War? Or at least to try not to be utterly crushed by the First World War.
Something for the German spotter planes to see?
Yes.
The fake weaponry or something like that?
Wooden
Wooden tanks or something?
Big baguette.
it was a fake something.
Fake Eiffel Tower.
Well, and more.
Fake guillotine.
Fake Paris.
A fake Paris,
Fake Paris.
Corin. Well done. Finally. Finally. Come on, Elsie, come on. And now you've had the pleasure of a whole audience being patronising to you. Come on, Ozzy, come on. Yes, you're absolutely right. The French were very worried as bombing technology was improving towards the end of the war that Paris, their beloved Paris, was going to go up in smoke and all the wonderful buildings. So 15 miles to the north, on the stretch of the Seine, they built lots of buildings, including a Gare du Nord and even moving lights to suggest the railway tracks and other such things. Unfortunately, it was never completed because they only had the idea in 1918, and by November, of course, the war
Was it to scale?
over. From the air, yes, I think it was.
Not like that London in Legoland.
No, not like that. Got my hands on the American nuclear trigger. Without putting yourselves to too much effort, see if you can tell me what the code is.
Secret trigger code.
The secret trigger code given to every American president between the years of 1960 and 1977.
I think that if you've got to remember it under pressure,
Yes.
and it would be a pressure situation,
Surely.
beginning the end of the world, it's got to be something quite simple.
It's 00000000. That literally was the code. 4 zeros twice, 8 zeros.
8 zeros.
And 8 zeros, that was the password.
Is that because you're just about... It's the end of the world, and you're going to go, oh.
Did the president, when he's testing this, did he do the chip and pin, you know, that little dance you do when is the shopkeeper just looking at you and you kind of go,
or pretend to press?
No.
Well, you do a book, because I just do a cover.
No,
I
because
just do
you've
a
not
straight...
noticed polite shopkeepers now do this, which is
Yeah.
what they call the penny chews.
Yeah.
You just go like that and they do
I think it's pretend to do other numbers than the ones they're doing.
Yeah. You're there with the lovely Debbie McGee going...
Do your number, but while you're doing your number, you say a different number slightly under your breath, so you look like a bit of an...
Well, that's like all rubbing your tummy and patting your head.
Like
Yes, that is clever.
His number's 457.
But because the people I always most hated at school were those who, when they were writing in a test, did that.
Yeah.
As if one cared about what
That's
dribble they wrote.
because you're not an idiot.
Oh, no. It's just such a creepy way of behaving. So I always just do like that, grandly make sure that my number is...
I published mine in The Sun once.
It
went quite badly wrong.
That was very funny.
I couldn't understand it because they were complaining that everybody's bank details had been left on a train by a civil servant or somebody, and I thought, well, it doesn't make any difference because all they can do is make a deposit. So I published my number, and there you go, there's my bank account number. What are you going to do with that? And the Diabetic Society helped themselves to 500 quid.
Well, where are 1% of American adults?
Oh, I imagine we could find out, couldn't we? We could use Google Earth, because some of them are quite big.
There's one. He's got his own postcode.
1% of the population, which is... What's the population? It's about
300 million, isn't it?
So you're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million, say?
Jail.
Yes. G for jail. English spelling of jail, of course, but it is G for jail.
Really, that many people? 3 million people are locked up?
Well, 2.3, which is 1 in every 99.1 adults.
All of those guys there are innocent as well, because they all were arrested for having switchblades, but they've all only got one arm.
Well spotted. Proportionally, the Americans are prison more than twice as many as South Africans, more than 3 times as many as the Iranians, more than 6 times as many as the Chinese. No society in history has imprisoned more of its citizens than the United States of America.
We're doing pretty well, though, don't we? We sort of top the European League.
We're ahead of China, Turkey and India.
Yes.
Yeah, with 148 prisoners per 100,000.
It's the 3 strikes and they're out.
That's been
really
the problem,
bumped it up
yeah.
recently.
I mean, a legal system based on baseball just seems bizarre.
Yes.
People don't seem to understand the law. It's all very complicated. What's simple? What do people like? Baseball. Right then. Here's the rule.
3 strikes and you're out, yeah.
Mental.
What it means is if the first 2 strikes, the first 2 crimes you're convicted of are serious enough, the third one, no matter how trivial, will get a life sentence, 25 years or more. So, for example, Leandro Andrade is serving 2 consecutive 25-year terms for shoplifting 9 videotapes. Or...
He took 9?
Yes. Kevin Webber, 26 years for stealing 4 chocolate chip cookies. It's astonishing.
It's really stupid, isn't it? Because if you know you're on this sort of deal...
Yes.
Yeah.
Take 5.
Yes.
That is
the idea. Do another murder. Do a bank job. There's no point...
There's no point doing anything trivial.
If
No,
you're
I know.
going to get caught.
It is a bit bonkers. But the racial numbers are a bit worrying. And the gender numbers, it's 1 in 30 men aged 20 to 34 is behind bars. But for black males, that's 1 in 9. 1 in 9. There are more 17-year-old black people in jail than in college in America. So 5% of the world are American, 25% of all prisoners
Isn't the real
are American.
controversy with this the business end of it?
Well, that's true. It's also, as you say, right, it is a business.
Because it's not just licence plate, they make loads of stuff.
Well, one of the things I should have said when talking about contraband is that you're not allowed to bring into America anything that's been made by forced labour or prisons. But in America, you could almost say, if you were so minded, that they've reinvented the slave trade. They produce, for example, 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags and other items of uniform, 93% of domestically produced paints, 36% of home appliances, 21% of office furniture, which allows the United States to compete with factories in Mexico because, of course, obviously the workers can't refuse to work for 25 cents an hour.
I'd very much like to say something hilarious, but something must be done.
It is.
Should we...
It
feels a bit more question-timey to say.
It is a bit amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's slavery by the back door.
Exactly what it is.
Which is another video that I've got.
What's the name of the highly fortified building where most of the gold in America is kept?
Oh, no, don't do it, don't do it.
Yes.
Beckham's house?
The Beckham House is a good answer. Most of the gold in America is kept in a single place.
Is this a double bluff and it is going to be Fort Knox?
It's not Fort Knox. No. Nearly twice as much gold is at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, which is their equivalent to the Bank of England. They have there about 7,000 tons of bullion, and in Fort Knox, they've got no more than around 4,500 tons, which is not quite half.
A pittance.
It's still a lot. But they've had some interesting things in Fort Knox, apart from gold. They've had one of the great English treasures, if I were to say...
Thora Hurd?
Not Thora Hurd. I'll say the year 1215 too, does it?
The Magna Carta.
Very good. They had the Magna Carta in Fort Knox for some short time. They also stored the crown, sword, sceptre, orb and cape of St. Stephen, King of Hungary, was stored there and then returned to the government in Hungary in 1978.
Was it like a cloakroom? Did he come in? Go, all right, take the cape, there's me home.
And then lost his ticket and they wouldn't give it back.
Really annoying.
Honestly, I'm the King of Hungary. Let me try the crown on. It's a perfect fit, I promise.
And where does
Anyway.
Spandau Ballet fit into the whole equation?
They're like the Rasputin of the new government.
Is there something I'm missing out here? There's...
Go!
Go!
Always believing. Let's sing that and run at him.
You're indestructible. Always believe it. Go!
Very impressive way. So, we're currently now, not giving too much away, in a studio in London. Where is the nearest piece of American soil to us here?
Grosvenor Square?
Is it?
The fact is, most people wrongly think that you're right that the American embassy is in Grosvenor Square at the moment, though they're about to move it. But an embassy is not considered the sovereign soil of the nation whose embassy it is. It belongs to Britain, the soil there. It's not American soil. This is a myth, this idea that the moment you step foot, you're on American soil. They wanted to buy the lease. Who owns Grosvenor Square?
Duke of Westminster.
The Duke of Westminster. The Grosvenor family, yeah, the Duke of Westminster. And they asked for the freehold. And do you know what he said? He said, yes, if you give my family back the state of Virginia, which you confiscated from us. You can have that. So, they decided not to.
Good work, Duke of Westminster. I like him already.
But there is American soil in Britain, and the nearest to us is in Surrey. It's a tiny area. It's a memorial. A place in Surrey famous for an extraordinary British event in the year 1215. Do you know what happened?
Signing of the Magna Carta.
Yes, I know where it is.
Runnymede. Runnymede.
Runnymede.
Yes. But what is the memorial in Runnymede?
There's a JFK memorial.
It's the memorial to John F. Kennedy.
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah. And it's deliberately these sort of isometric, or whatever the word is, asymmetric steps, this slightly higgledy-piggledy, to suggest a journey of pilgrimage towards him. And it is officially American soil.
Which who was the first president of America?
Washington.
Another two.
No. Surprisingly not. No, he was probably the 15th.
See?
He was the first president of an independent United States of America, but there had been many presidents of the United States in Congress assembled, presidents of the Continental Congress of America. And the first one was called Randolph, Peyton Randolph. The second one was called John Hancock.
Oh, Hancock,
And what does John Hancock mean? Fingers on buzzers quickly, if you're an American. Oh, you got there, David.
It means signature.
Yes. I was just very alarmed when I first went to America and was told to put... I just told you to put your John Hancock on the... My what? Where? Just put your John Hancock down. Whoa. But that's what it means. They use it all the time.
Well, it's the reason being is that on the Declaration of Independence they all signed it, and everyone went sort of, and that's me. Hancock came along. John
Hancock.
Hancock.
It is.
So you can actually see it from space.
Yeah. But you're right. His is the big signature on the Declaration of Independence. So there you are. There were 13 others after Peyton, and then on 30th of April, 1789, George Washington was sworn in as the first president of the independent United States.
Why do American farmers, gentlemen, hate Shakespeare? There's a picture of American farmers hating Shakespeare. Something to do with Shakespeare caused immense trouble to American farming. It's not Shakespeare's fault at all.
Not some farming practice that's hidden away in the sonnets or something?
It was an eccentric drug manufacturer called Eugene Schieffelin, and he decided that America should contain examples of every bird species named in the works of Shakespeare. And one particular species didn't exist in America, and he thought, oh, I'll introduce these. He introduced 100 to Central Park, and there are now estimated something like 200 million of them.
It's not the common pigeon, is it?
No, they come in huge flocks.
Starlings.
Starlings is the right answer. Starlings.
And they don't like them because they eat the seeds?
Yeah. Unfortunately, what they do is they befoul everything in their droppings that they don't eat. They're such huge flocks. Vast flocks.
I was on Brighton Pier one time, and there are lots of starlings there, and at dusk they do that.
They're beautiful.
And it's really amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's a
if you stand on the
wonderful
pier. And then someone said that starlings come from hundreds of miles away to join in this coastal flocking.
Yeah.
And they come from as far away as Germany and Poland.
A lot of the Polish ones are coming over here now and taking away a lot of the British Starlings' jobs. As you'll see a lot of British Starlings just sat on the prom like this, come bloody typical.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're the lazy British Starlings who don't want to work.
Why don't they just get up and join in, you know? But they won't, will they? It's typical, typical.
No, you're right. The flocks are up to 1 million, some of them. I mean, enormous flocks.
And are they just having fun? Or is it a good way of eating?
No, in the case of fish, I know that what they're really doing is presenting, as it were, an enormous fish that sort of glistens and frightens some predators, and in other cases it confuses and dazzles. And
So
they're a lot
starlings-
safer than...
Starlings are basically scared of sharks.
I'm not so sure about the
shark
shocking
might
size.
leap out of the West Pier.
You may laugh, but when was a starling last killed by a shark?
That's true.
So it works. You're absolutely right. It's 100%. It is 100% starkly proven that this shall keep us safe from sharks. Come on, boys. Fum! And they're like that way.
So, good, excellent. Starlings were brought to America in an attempt to introduce all the birds in Shakespeare to the US. They're now major pets. This question is an easy one, so I'll give it randomly to my old friend Sandy. What can you tell me about this chap behind you?
Oh. Well, do you think that the words give it away, or is that going to be unfair? The fact that it says the Puritan.
Well...
That seems unfair.
It does seem unfair, doesn't it?
It's a horrible start to think.
Because what it is the 19th century idea of a Puritan, and in fact the 19th century idea of a Puritan, which we retain to this day, is completely inaccurate. The steeple hat and those sort of clothing, absolutely no evidence whatsoever.
Well, they wore a
like
beanie
that.
hat normally, did they?
They wore ordinary clothes like anybody else,
Yes.
but if they were having their portraits taken, they usually wore their Sunday best, which tended to be black.
So he's not a Puritan at all?
No, he's a 19th century idea of a Puritan. You were right to say he was a Puritan because it says on it, the Puritan.
I was merely reading.
And I was being unjust, and you've lost 10 points. But it doesn't matter because you've already won.
Yeah.
So...
Do you know, I'm quite relaxed about the whole show.
Exactly. Now, what can you tell me about the Puritans in America?
They went over on the Mayflower. I keep expecting the thing to go off again.
Yeah.
They didn't go on the Mayflower.
No, the great American myth, if you like, is the Puritans arrived on the Mayflower. And they came to avoid religious persecution. In fact, they came in order to be able to persecute.
Yeah, but they hated the Quakers.
What they objected to was the religious freedom in England that meant that you could have all kinds of ranges of religion. Yes, and in 1660, they hanged a woman just for being a Quaker.
Yeah, Mary Dyer.
That's right,
Yeah.
the very one. Obviously, many people did come to America to avoid persecution in other lands, but the idea that Puritans came to avoid persecution is they came to persecute. Yeah. They wanted to build a country in which there could be no dissent from Puritanism.
Puritans, they regarded luxury as sinful, didn't they?
Yes.
So, and some of them set off to America and the others opened B&Bs in Britain.
Hey!
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. B&Bs, breakfast until 7. Don't call it B&B, just call it B. If you've got no intention of serving breakfast, don't call it B&B.
Do you know, I once did a trip. I sailed all the way around Britain, and we finally got to Northumbria, and on the coastline there was a house that had paint on the side. It said, bed and breakfast, hot and cold water. I thought, only in this country would you feel you must advertise that you have both.
Oh, yes. No, it used to be hot and cold running water. Is there? It's not just a bucket of it lying there. No, there's pipes and everything.
In this painting, did the native there on the left, did he bring that tree to hide behind? Did it look...
He doesn't look happy.
And it does the wrong way around.
Yeah, he can see which way the wind is blowing.
I think he knows what's coming, doesn't he?
It's true, Stephen, that the Puritans weren't on the Mayflower. They always say they landed at Plymouth Rock, but in fact it was Provincetown, so none of it is actually true.
I'm afraid, it's a myth. Every country likes to build up a sort of legend of its own foundation.
Brown and sicky.
Oh, the taste of vomit. Brown, the taste of vomit.
It is something that has a chemical in it that is also in vomit.
It's American chocolate.
It is American chocolate, you're absolutely right. So if you buy American chocolate, it tastes, I don't know, more tangy and bitter than European chocolate. Do you know why?
Yes, milk. They use UHT, don't they, or dried milk or something?
The chocolate factories in the United States are further from the dairy farms than in the UK, obviously, so you've got to move the milk for a bit longer. And so they have a chemical process which extends the shelf life, and it produces something called butyric acid. And that is the same stuff that you get in Parmesan cheese.
Yes.
And in vomit. So even chocolate brands that don't use that process sometimes add that acid anyway, just to mimic the taste, because the Americans have got used to it. So if you think, actually, it tastes a bit sicky, it's because it's the same acid as in sick. But the American chocolate has a lot more sugar in it, and it has fewer cocoa solids. 20% in the UK, 10% in American.
That's the fat coming to the... You know when you get chocolate and it goes white if you leave it too long?
When you find it in the back of a drawer.
Yeah. It's the fat comes out of it, it rises out of it.
I was doing a play once in the West End, and this is in 2003, I think. And an elderly lady came to see it, I think, 4 times. And on the 4th time, she gave me a Kit Kat. I said, oh, that's very kind. And then the next day, I ate the Kit Kat, and it tasted exactly like an old lady's cupboard. It's not a euphemism. And I looked on the sell-by date, and it was 1998. It was a 5-year-old Kit Kat. I mean, it may have been more. I don't know how long they last.
Do you think she bought it 5 years ago and thought, I'm saving this?
She found it in a cupboard and thought, I'll give that to that bloke who's boring me shitless every night at that play.
She saw it and it caught her eye. She thought, I know he'll like that. Alan, I have to build up his trust over a number of years and then I'll be able to give it to him. And he'll definitely eat it because he'll trust me.
But the odour of the old lady's cupboards was unmistakable.
I think we're being very mean.
OK.
You'll be an old lady-ish soon.
Yeah.
And we'll all be
my
saying
cupboards
that
will
you
probably
smell
like that, but they don't at the moment.
You smell of old ladies.
Cupboard?
I've never been less insulted in my life.
Hershey's have a history of making chocolate with a bitter taste. In the 1930s, they developed a special bar. It was for the American military, and they wanted it to be deliberately unappealing. Why do you think they might do that?
Wartime brides. They made shit chocolate and stockings with holes in them.
In order to lure the British brides?
No, to keep them away from American soldiers.
OK. Why would they make deliberately unpleasant chocolate?
Have bromide in it.
No, it's meant as an emergency ration, so you don't want the soldiers going, ooh, lovely chocolate, and eating it.
I was in CCF at school and we had
that?
A Combined Cadet Forces.
I was in that as well.
Which were you?
Army.
Right, I was RAF. But basically...
Did you say that like it was better?
That's what they were like. That's what the RAF ones were like.
Yeah, they had this thing called 24-hour ration kit, which we had to have. We did do like an overnight, you know...
Manoeuvre.
Yeah, in like Iraq or something.
Ching for flame we did ours.
We did our RAF Odeon.
Did you?
Yeah.
You did it in the cinema?
No, Odium.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Odeon.
I did too.
What is the RAF?
Can't do night manoeuvres in the Odeon. A whole different thing.
And we had those things, and they were supposed to sort of have enough calories in it to last you 24 hours, and they packed into a tiny thing, and they did exactly that. It meant you didn't want to eat the chocolate first.
No, you didn't want to eat it. It's called a D ration. It was also known as a Logan bar. It was named after the colonel who first ordered their manufacture. And so it was high energy content, could withstand high temperatures, but frankly, barely any better than a boiled potato.
Oh, I like boiled potato.
A cold boiled potato.
Any temperature.
Yeah.
No, not one that would burn your mouth.
But there it is, look, and in the soldiers hated it so much. They used to call it Hitler's secret weapon because it made them ill.
There's definitely been nights I would just have eaten it.
It wrought havoc with their teeth and intestines.
I know, but even then, there's been nights where I've just been craving chocolate so badly, I'd have just eaten it.
Just gone for it anyway.
Yeah.
Now, automobiles, America, the land of the free, the land of the automobile. You can imagine that in places like Pennsylvania, they must have welcomed them when they arrived, yes?
No.
No. It's the right answer. Alan, you're really getting the hang of this.
Played this before. You're going to intuit.
You would be astounded by the Farmers Anti-Automobile Association of Pennsylvania with its list of impractical requirements for motorists. Automobiles travelling on country roads at night must send up a rocket every mile. And then wait 10 minutes for the road to clear. The driver may then proceed with caution, blowing his horn and shooting off Roman candles. If the driver of an automobile sees a team of horses approaching, he is to stop, pull to one side of the road, cover his machine with a blanket or dust cover, which is painted or coloured to blend into the scenery. In case a horse is unwilling to pass an automobile on the road, the driver of the car must take the machine apart as rapidly as possible and conceal the parts in the bushes. Really didn't want motor cars in Pennsylvania. Honking the horn, is that a sensible, safe thing to do? Does it avoid accidents?
Oh, it'll frighten the horses.
Well, obviously, let's assume we're talking about now when there aren't any.
Wouldn't it raise
very
aggression? Hearing a loud noise makes you probably release adrenaline, and then your instincts would be flawed, I would have thought.
I think you're absolutely right.
Have you ever driven in Italy? I've been on tour in Italy, and the word go is die in Italy.
Avanti.
Die! Like, fuck! I'm 19, I'm not a driver.
No, but you're absolutely right. There is no evidence that using the horn contributes to safety.
There's something interesting with police sirens, isn't there? Because it's two different notes, and the reason is if you hear one note for a long time, you can't tell where it's coming from.
That's exactly right. You genuinely can't tell. Is that in front of me?
Yeah.
Should I put, or is it behind me? You just don't know. In America, they have a very good rule when you hear a siren on the road.
Yeah.
You just simply stop driving.
Yeah.
And go
Absolutely.
and have a meal.
And then... But it actually somehow works out incredibly well, and the emergency vehicle just...
But they have wider roads.
They have
probably.
much wider roads, of course, yeah. But it does work
I
fantastic.
usually
And
try
everybody does it.
See which of the emergency services it is, and then decide.